Hello everyone, and welcome to another Let's Play of The Royal Trap by Hanako Games. My name is Anna Mardal. This is my second playthrough of this game. My first playthrough was where we got the Prince Gaston ending, and I do recommend watching that one first because I read all the text on screen instead of skipping forward a little bit like I do here so as not to be too repetitive. When we last left off in this playthrough, we were going for the Oscar ending, and we had gone through the prologue, which introduces everyone, and the chapter 1, where Madeline decides whose apartment to sneak into. We had decided to sneak into Duke Farrod's apartment, and we'd found guns and musket balls and intrigue. When we came back to our apartments, Oscar had been held hostage by Prince Caleb, and that is where we're going to pick off today. Pick up today, not pick off. I'm hoping that we can get through chapter 2 and 3, since we're going a little bit faster now. Drowning my heart's panicked cry, I force myself to examine the situation in detail. Oscar's eyes are wide over the silken gag, probably stray hose. I don't see any signs of further injury or struggle. Caleb's actions must have taken him completely by surprise. How could either of us have guessed the prince was a madman? Think! Stall for time. Think! You can't possibly mean that. You're already suspect. This bow, he nudges very slightly with his blade, and Oscar flinches, was the last one with my sister, and you have been creeping about like a spider. If I kill you both and claim self-defense, do you think anyone will have any questions? That presumes you can win. Perhaps you could hold me off with your little stings, but too late for your livelihood here. You're bluffing. You wouldn't dare murder a visiting prince, especially not like this. Tied up, his blood all over your clothes. If I scream for the guards, you couldn't possibly have the time to clean up the evidence. He laughs. Clever. You are the one I need. I don't want his blood or any part of him, but if we can't make a deal, I will have to call for the guards, and we'll see what happens. What do you want from me? Your oath. You serve me without question until Cassidy is safe, and no knife in my back. And you expect me to cooperate when you're threatening my friend. I need a partner I can trust absolutely, and this is the only leverage I've got. I don't have time to argue. Your oath, now. There's really no choice to be made. I can't let him harm Oscar. Fine, I'll do what you want. Formal oath. He presses his bare palm to the edge of his sword, just long enough to break the skin, and then holds it out to me. A blood vow, that's what he wants. My hand and my blood match to his, my honor subject to his will, a privilege that, until now, has belonged to Oscar alone, and by that bond I can't refuse. Fighting down a feeling of panic at events moving beyond my power to control them, I remove my glove and scratch across my palm. Then, before Oscar's eyes, I place my hand in Caleb's, skin to skin. I offer you my service and obedience until the rescue of Princess Cassidy, within limits. I won't murder for you, and I won't die for you. And if any harm comes to Oscar, the deal is off. Pushy, aren't you? So I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit. Caleb takes his sword away from Oscar's throat, and Madeline unties Oscar, who now wants to make a scene, which is entirely understandable and kind of within his prerogative after having been thwacked over the head and tied up. He's allowed to be upset, but he is making things more difficult for Madeline right now. I liked him better with the muzzle. I understand that feeling, I really do. So, Caleb is going to ask, or, well, order Madeline to help him rob the treasury in order to get the ransom that he's been told to provide to get Cassidy back safely. And of course, Madeline is saying, why don't you just take the guards? And Caleb doesn't tell us the real reason, but part of the reason is probably because the person holding Cassidy hostage was previously his accomplice in making her a hostage in the first place. Oscar sighs and leans against the doorframe. He's looking a bit pale. This day has taken a heavy toll on him, both emotionally and physically. Come on, we have work to do. Just you, Valois. He stays here. Leave Oscar alone? So we have a couple of options. We can go with Caleb now, or we can talk to Oscar first. Previously, because I try to do different material each walkthrough if possible, previously we just went straight off with Caleb. Now we're going to talk to Oscar first. May we have a minute first? Caleb looks back and forth between Oscar and myself. Either you trust me, or you don't. I agreed to work with you. I need to talk to my friend. Fine, I will wait. Briefly. He steps out the door, leaving me alone with Oscar. We look at each other, and the first words out of each of our mouths are exactly the same. Are you all right? You first. Oh, I'm fine. He came in, said he wanted to talk, but he didn't say much. He asked where you were, and I didn't know what to tell him. I said I sent you to the kitchens for a snack. I don't think he believed that. He took my hand, and then all of a sudden, he twisted it up behind my back, tied me up, pushed me aside. It all happened so fast. Twice in one night. You must think I'm completely hopeless. Both times, I wasn't with you. It's my fault, not yours. He pulls a long-nosed face. I didn't know what was going on, and he'd stuffed me like a goose, so I couldn't even squawk. He just waited. Then we heard the outer door open, and he drew his sword and went out there, and I heard the fight, and I thought, I was afraid. I'm fine. He tried to kill you. I've had rougher sparring matches. So have you. I'm not even scratched. Really, I'm fine. He's a dangerous man. I don't like the thought of you alone with him. I'm not going off with him like that. He's forced you into things already. Reaching forward, he takes my hand and turns it over to display the mark of my unwilling oath. What else will he make you do? The reason I left in the first place was to rescue Cassidy. That's still the plan. He's got a lead, that's all. You don't have to do this. We could find someone else to turn to. I gave him my word. As long as he doesn't try to force me to act outside honor, I don't intend to break it. It's better to make friends than enemies, right? He stands there, looking at me, and his eyes are old and tired. I have to go. Come back safe. I squeeze his hand in acknowledgement, and I make my exit. Caleb is waiting for me, leaning too casually against the wall beside the door. I was listening, you know. I know. Trust only goes so far. So, what now? So this part we've already seen. We need to assemble the ransom money, which is a high amount, more than anyone has lying around, but not nearly as much as what a princess is worth, which I really think shows how smart Dolores is, that she did make this doable, that Caleb could do it as a single person on his own, as opposed to having to call in his parents and the guards and everything get messy, and didn't get so caught up in greed that she made a mess for herself. If Caleb hadn't gone to get Madeline and Oscar, then she would have gotten away scot-free. So we've seen all this before, and I'm not going to read it all again. Essentially, we go to the royal treasury and feign a broken ankle or a twisted ankle or a wounded ankle of some of some description, and Caleb escorts us back to our rooms, and the process of escorting hides the clinking coin bag that he has smuggled out of the treasury from when he went in there to return some jewelry from the ball earlier. So, not the most exciting royal treasury break-in ever. Nobody scaled any walls, although we did scale walls earlier, but practical. And a practical distraction that was done without trying to be sexy and seduce the guards, which is completely overdone, and as she pointed out, or as he pointed out, very obvious. This is actually much more subtle, and I like that. So, and I could go through the text a little bit faster, but I wanted to keep it so that people could pause and still see it if they wanted to, so. I will escort this young woman. Yes, Your Highness. Caleb bends, bringing his shoulders to a level where I can more easily fling a grateful arm around them. He nods to the guard. Carry on. And we leave the man to lock the door behind us now that the gold has already flown away. We gave up the charade on our return to Oscar's quarters in case of observation, and I really like this point that gets made here that while it's a good thing that Caleb isn't taking advantage of the situation to either sexually assault her or just belittle and humiliate and embarrass her. He's not doing any of this. He could, but he's not. Is good that he's not doing that, but it doesn't necessarily make him a good guy. The failure to act like an odious brute at every opportunity does not make him a hero. It only means that he is, at worst, not that sort of villain. And I appreciate that point being made, because a lot of, media, movies, books tend to kind of treat heroism and villainy as a binary switch, where, if someone is a villain, there are all the different possible types of villainy in one bucket. So, so of course, if someone's a bad guy, then they also, sexually assault people left and right, or humiliate them, or... Now, of course, this isn't really a total turn on the head of that trope, because Caleb is sympathetic. I don't think he's intended to be seen as the villain of the piece. Obviously, he's done bad things. He's incredibly violent. He assaulted Oscar twice, and he will hurt Dolores later, and kill a guard. Basically, violence is the first thing he goes to, which is bad and actually kind of scary for me, but he's also, I think, pretty clearly meant to be sympathetic in that that's kind of the only thing he's ever known. He is a prince, but his parents basically beat and abused him for whenever he failed to play the role that they wanted him to play. So, so he's not a villain. Or if he is the closest thing to a villain in this piece, he's clearly intended to be a sympathetic one. And I do like that there's that complexity there. The instant the door closes behind us, Oscar rushes to my side. Madeline! I'm fine. It was an act. I retract my arm from Caleb's shoulders and stand on my own 2 feet. Your assistance was competent. Is that supposed to be a thank you? But you can't thank someone for doing what you forced them to, can you? Oscar, it's all right. No, it's not. He turns to face Caleb. Are you done with her? Hardly. This was only the first step. We have the ransom. Now we have to reach the rendezvous. And where's that? Forest, couple of miles away. Outside the palace? The guards may have missed the initial intrusion, but they're certainly guarding all exits now. Which means... You know a secret way out? He only nods, his eyes locked on Oscar's. I hold my breath, anticipating an explosion, but when Oscar speaks, his words are carefully measured. You're not taking her without me. I need a blade I can rely on. That means her and not you. I am not actually that bad with a sword. Whatever's going on, you expect it might end in a fight. Wouldn't 3 on your side be better than 2? He's thinking it through. Good for you, Oscar. If you really didn't trust him, you wouldn't want to leave him here while you're not even in the palace. Can he actually fight? Would you care to try me? I'm asking her, not you. He's a prince. Of course he can fight. But is he any good compared to, say, myself? That question is a trap, plain and simple. Whatever I say, they will both hear it. So our options are he is good in a fair fight, he's not as good as you, and he's better than you. So, hey, we're going for Oscar, we might as well be extra super loyal and say he's better than you. I raise my chin. He could defeat you. You're a liar. Loyal, but a liar. Of course, Caleb has already defeated Oscar tonight, hasn't he? Perhaps I overstate his skills, but when you surprised him here earlier, he wasn't armed. That's not a fair comparison, to know how he'd react if you were expecting trouble. He won't embarrass you if that's what you're asking. In all truth, I'm not certain whether or not it is a good idea to take Oscar along. It depends on what Caleb's plans really are, and that is a question I can't answer. He's assembled a ransom, but as Oscar said, he sounds like he's preparing for a fight. Maybe he's just guarding himself in case the kidnappers try to capture him as well, or maybe there's something else going on here. If there's a battle waiting for us, Oscar could get hurt. But with all the secrets and schemes going on here, I'm not sure that leaving him behind would be safer. If Caleb actually didn't trust Oscar, he might have arranged for something to happen to him once I was out of the way, or any of the other nobles might come around asking questions. No, I can't leave the palace without him. He's my responsibility, and I must not abandon him. I could never forgive myself if something went wrong without me there to defend him. And if it comes to a battle, then at least I would have someone at my back whose loyalty I could rely on. Caleb I can't trust. Oscar I could never doubt. So, chapter 2 is a little bit of a repetitive one because we've already seen all this before. Caleb agrees that Oscar can come with, and Oscar agrees to behave himself, and Madeline agrees to keep everybody in line. Will you be quiet? See, we're getting along just fine. I can't help smiling along with him. Even under such tension, nothing dampens his spirit for long. So we have the ransom and we have backup. And where is this secret exit? So he's going to take us to the old catacombs / new sewers / special extra exit that nobody knows about but the royal family. And we've all seen this, so I'm going to skip forward just a little bit. But it is cute to me, I think, that for all that Caleb is presented as the cynical, serious, business-like, nothing rattles him character, and Oscar is silly and playful and cheerful and easily provoked into different emotions. For all of that, whenever a snake falls on Caleb's the one that jumps and and makes an expression, and Oscar is the one that very calmly picks up the snake and gently tosses it away. Even not fully knowing whether the snake is poisonous or not. So I think that's cute. And of course, then we get some extra cynical philosophy slash angst over Caleb's sort of pointing out that poor people with anything to value, he doesn't feel they would leave behind with the dead. And it is, I do, he's villainous, but there's a lot of sad points there stemming from the fact that he's basically had a really abusive upbringing, and I don't get the impression that he's known a whole lot of love or familial affection. Clearly the person he was closest to was the person that he knew as Caspian, and then he felt like Caspian was taken away from him either by fate or illness, and then later by his parents, who, I mean, they're abusive, so it seemed perfectly reasonable that they would abuse more than one of their children. So he's had a rough time of it. And now we're in the forest, and trying to keep a low profile from the guards, and we're going to find out that the ransom drop-off isn't until tomorrow. And we didn't bring any blankets or food or anything. And I don't know exactly what time of year this is supposed to be and how warm or cold it's supposed to be, but you know, just as a public service announcement, you can die from exposure at a much lower temperature than you might think. So if you're going to sleep out of doors in a forest, do take blankets. That's my advice. Was that not obvious? If it had been obvious earlier, we could have brought supplies, blankets, food from the kitchen. Dinner is over. How many meals a day do they eat in Osendower? In Osendower, we eat a good breakfast before a hard day's work, or a fight. It's all right. Once the sun's up, we can hunt for plants, and with a stream right here, we could even fish. With no hook, line, or net. Right. Well, we can still find food. It'll be fun. This is not fun. So now Oscar is going to use his puppy dog eyes to convince Caleb to tell them a little bit more about the situation. And it's an interesting example of Oscar and Madeline working well together, because Madeline posed the question with logic and reason. You know, please tell us what's going on. We can help you better if you tell us what's going on. And whenever Caleb said, no, not gonna, Oscar employed emotion and sort of emotional manipulation in a good way. That word has a lot of pejorative connotations attached to it, but emotional manipulation in a positive way, to be like, but please tell us. And then we learn a little bit more. Which, Madeline's not wrong. It is necessary for us to be helpful to know what the heck is going on. Now, I do want to point out that Caleb is essentially trying to get them to kill Dolores, who, as far as he knows, is still acting as a lone actor in all this. And she was his accomplice in kidnapping Cassidy. And yes, I can understand why he's angry and concerned, because then Dolores double-crossed him and really kidnapped Cassidy, and he doesn't even know if Cassidy's safe. So I can understand why he's angry, but it should be noted, and Dolores kind of does point this out later, that his insistence that they kill her could be read as sort of him covering his tracks, because she's really the best witness against him that he did something that could seriously get him imprisoned or executed for treason. He laid hands on the heir to the kingdom. And so that concerns me about Caleb. I am going to go through his ending, but I do hope that there's a sort of more redemptive arc for recognizing that violence and murder are not the best solutions to all of his problems. Because we really would be murdering Dolores at that point. So, After me nattering on for a bit, we have a couple of options. One is talk to Caleb, which is necessary if you're going to take his path. And the other is talk to Oscar, which is necessary if we're going to take his path. And we are going to take Oscar's path, so we're going to go talk to him. I find Oscar a little ways along, seated by the stream. Despite what he said earlier, he doesn't seem to be assembling a bed, just staring into the rippling surface of the water. Hi. Hi. Mindful of the damp, I take my time choosing a seat beside him. You did well with Caleb. You put him at ease. You got him to open up to you, at least a little. Without your help, I wouldn't have any information at all. I do listen, you know, in all those lessons. Just because I don't want to spend my life manipulating people doesn't mean I can't do it. I never said you couldn't do it. No, but you were surprised, weren't you? You think I'm a child, and it's more fun sometimes, acting like one. I don't think you're a child. No? Then what is it? His eyes fall upon the amber stone, which hangs around my neck. Why do you always turn me away? You said we weren't going to do this. That was then. That was before I had to listen to someone trying to kill you while I was helpless. I know he wasn't. That doesn't change how it felt to me then. How it felt to watch him force you into his hands, to stay behind while he took you away, to see you draped over him. It was nothing. Shh, I'm telling you how I felt. I thought I could be a grown-up and let you go without a fight, but I was wrong. We need to talk. My heart is hammering in my chest. We can't do this. So our options here are, what about Cassidy? And you're like a brother to me. And I sort of had a chance to sort of rant about this earlier, and I'm going to mention again that a kind of sort of pet peeve of mine is that, and I mean, it's a game, so there's going to be a non-standard game over, of course. And the non-standard game over, if you fail to cultivate the necessary relationship with Oscar or Caleb or Nizagi or Gaston or Dolores, if you fail to cultivate any allies, then once you're thrown into prison, nobody comes to visit you, and you're eventually sent back to Osendower in disgrace, and you know, maybe the future will be better, but maybe it won't, you don't know. And the first time I played through the game, I wasn't using a walkthrough, and I was just using you know, picking things as made sense. And I was super sweet to Oscar, but, you know, kept telling them that he was like a brother to me. So when we got to this point, I said, oh, you're like a brother to me. And he basically sort of, after that, he's kind of rude. And I get being rude, I do. It's painful when somebody turns you down after a confession like that. But then he also doesn't make any attempt to rescue you. Even though you've been together for years, this is the closest relationship that he may ever have in his entire life. Barring, you know, if he's fortunate enough to marry someone that he has a love match with, maybe, you know, or maybe a really close friend later, or children or something. But barring the future, in terms of just past experiences, his relationship with Madeline is the closest thing that he has. And yet, if he's like a brother to her, he doesn't show up. But if you kiss here in a second, he will show up. So, I mean, in terms of game mechanics, I get it. I'm not, you know, disagreeing that shouldn't have been a path, because most games have a non-standard game over. But in terms of characterization, it did kind of set me against Oscar maybe a little bit more than I otherwise would have been. But that's my little side soapbox. We're going for the Oscar path, so we're going to choose What About Cassidy? What about Cassidy? What about her? Aren't you in love with her? What? I barely know her. But you do like her. You're a good match for each other. She's young and light-hearted, just like you. She's a princess, an heir, and she likes you, and you're riding to her rescue. It's a classic romance. saving someone who's been kidnapped doesn't mean I'm in love with her. I saw you together. I saw how you two looked at each other. Now you'll be her hero, and you'll probably be married. And that's good, that's great, because you're jealous. What? You are actually jealous. Don't be ridiculous. I want you to marry Cassidy. It's the best thing for everyone. He leans in close to me, grinning like a cat who's had the cream. So, you were watching me dance with Cassidy, and you weren't at all thinking that you might like to dance with me. We shouldn't be doing this. You weren't thinking that you might like to go for a walk with me somewhere nice, like a river at night? We definitely shouldn't be doing this. I have to pull away. I have to... And then he leans in and kisses her. I can't think. This shouldn't happen. What do? I don't know how. Does he? I've never known how warm it would feel to... No. I scramble backwards, away from Oscar, breaking contact. We cannot do this. Maddie! No! You are my responsibility. I work for your parents. I take care of you. I cannot do this. And you are a prince. You're a leader. You've had the best tutors, the best of everything. You want to throw away everything your parents have given you to marry me? Do you know what would happen to us? We'd starve, that's what. No home, no money, no trade. We'd have nothing. We could talk to my parents. Your parents pay me to make you desirable to other women, not to corrupt you. I've worked so hard. I've done everything right. I'm not going to let you ruin your life. This didn't happen. Marry Cassidy and be happy. I turn and walk away, ignoring anything he tries to say behind me. So, kind of emotional there. I think that's a very powerfully well-written scene. I personally always kind of am never sure to know what to feel about romances where... I like romances where people were friends first, but obviously Madeline and Oscar have been a lot closer than that. She's taking care of him, and in a sense he is kind of her employer, or definitely his parents employ her. And I appreciate that she has and shows professional concern about this situation, as opposed to just la da da da, this is awesome. You know, so I know that was sort of angsty, but it was angsty in a way that I felt was realistic. So sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent. I have to go. I can't let him see my face. He must not see me cry. I thought I had everything under control. I thought I could let him go. I thought if I told myself I didn't love him enough times, I could make it true. It's not going to work. There is no way out. I do have feelings for Oscar, but we can never, ever be together. That was chapter 2. So this is chapter 3, the revelation. So, we wake up and everything is sort of awkward now because, well, first of all, we didn't sleep very well. And second of all, we didn't sleep very comfortably. And third of all, we don't have a lot of nice food for breakfast. Neither Oscar nor I make any reference to our conversation of the night before. This morning, we are strictly business. So we're not going to talk about that. And this is the part that we've all kind of seen before, and so I'm going to skip through here a little bit faster. I don't even remember if there are choices, and yeah, there's a few. And so Caleb has Oscar and Madeline take shelter in the grass and hide themselves until the quote-unquote kidnappers show up. Caleb's role in this is easier. He takes up a visible position along the road, pulls out a knife and a bit of wood, and begins whittling at it. Oscar, why did you have to kiss me? It doesn't make this any easier. He's always been so sweet and easygoing and innocent. I never thought he'd try to push further. It must have been the stress of yesterday. Everything will have to be different now. We must not touch each other anymore, not even for comfort. We have to be sure that nothing like that ever happens again. It will be easier once Cassidy is safe. I'm sure she and Oscar could be happy together. So we wait, and a newcomer shows up. Almost close enough. A single person. Dolores? So I'm going to speed through this just a little bit. The deal was a trade. Gold for the princess. Do you think I'm stupid? And this is kind of stilted dialogue that Caleb is using, and it's really no wonder that Dolores figures out that Madeline is here, besides the fact that she seems to be genuinely smart. And she did see them working together before, but he's definitely guarding his words very carefully, which does seem to indicate that, I mean, there's no talk of, you betrayed me, or we had a deal, or anything like that. So it actually is not surprising in retrospect that she figured out that they were being watched or followed. So, I mean, I understand why Caleb did it, but he basically, and he's probably aware of this, he basically gave our existence, our position, our presence away by being extra super careful with his words. She, in turn, always waits for him to move before she'll take a step to follow him, never allowing that distance between them to close. Which, I mean, she is really smart. She's also seen him violently assault Oscar the first time around. So, this has got to be kind of extra scary for her. May as well come out, Miss Nosy. I know you're out there, Osendower girl. I saw you with himself last night, playing Broken Bird. Tricky. So get over here. So, Madeline tries to decide if she's bluffing, and Caleb just, come on out. Which, the first time around seemed a little reckless of him to just give it up that easy, but since he knows that she knows that he's kind of talking funny by painting all this in a light that makes him look as innocent as possible, it's in retrospect a lot more sensible why he didn't even try to carry on the subterfuge. Just come on out, let's get this over with. Caleb picks up the scarf and extends his left hand to me. I'm not quite sure what he has in mind, but I place my right hand in his. He winds the scarf over and around and through our shared clasp, creating something that looks like a knot, but isn't actually. We are not tied, only tangled, and it will not take long to free ourselves again. And then we see pink on the forest floor. And it actually sort of bothers me that we decide to go tearing off after Dolores before we help Cassidy. Like, I just... Dolores is not a threat to anyone anymore. She's got some gold. Like, worst case, if she gets away, she's got gold. And it's actually, I think it's poorly thought out on, Caleb's part, because if Dolores got away free and clear, now obviously he'd rather just catch her and kill her, which is horrifying and scary, but if Dolores got away free and clear, she probably wouldn't stick around to testify against him. So the fact that, oh god, he's doing the thing where he strangles her, I don't like this part at all. He could probably tell a better story with her gone. But instead, he wants to capture her and kill her. which is actually kind of terrifying and horrific, but okay. We have to get back to Cass. Which, okay, now we care about Cassidy. It's fortunate that we're able to find our way back through the forest that we just recklessly tore through without any sense of bearing. There must be more to her story than I'm seeing. Who sponsored her to royal service? Why hasn't she been either advanced or dismissed? And I talked about this in the comments a little bit, I think. And this is a wild spun theory that I have no evidence for except for hair color and behavior. I think that the royal family acquired Dolores based on her pink hair and passing resemblance to Caspian in order to pass her off as an infant heiress so that they could then fake Caspian's death, switch Caspian out for Cassidy, and that was how they were able to raise Cassidy with the gender identity that she has. I think. I am basing this on like a little piece of hearsay and the fact that Dolores has pink hair and the royal family seems unusually indebted to her. So, sorry, is she alright? Do you have any hartshorn spirits? There is a faint moaning noise and Cassidy's head shifts. She's awake. Get her untied and sitting up carefully. Okay, so I'm gonna run through some of this too because we've already been through it once. But Cassidy accuses Caleb of being her kidnapper. And there are a couple of options here. And one is to protect Cassidy versus let Caleb explain. I'm gonna save the let Caleb explain for the walkthrough where we're actually trying to be Caleb's allies. So we're just gonna go back with protect Cassidy, which we've seen before. And honestly, I feel like both protecting Cassidy and letting Caleb explain are not mutually exclusive, and I'm personally would go with protecting her every time because she's obviously frightened of this violent man who kidnapped her. So she gets to be protected. And that's period. There's okay. I point a dagger at Caleb. Shut up. Excellent. Well done, Madeline. I'm going to skip through this just a little bit. And I do like that. I'm always sort of saying things I don't like about Oscar. I like that he is being kind and friendly to this woman, even though apparently he doesn't feel romantic feelings towards her. Even earlier when he talked with Madeline about the dance, he talked about how he felt like he could be really good friends with this woman. And, you know, it would be simple for him to feel like, well, we've got a good chemistry, I have to marry somebody, so might as well be this one. And instead, he's really genuinely treating her like a person. He's getting to know her as a friend. I really like that. I think that's a really good example of how not everything has to be romance. Even in a situation where the people are trying to prime them for romance, he's still pushing back against that and saying, no, I think I'm going to be friends with this person instead. We've got a really good friendship chemistry going on, and I like that a lot. So Caleb tells about how his sibling, Caspian, was the closest person in the world to him, and one day Caspian got sick. They took Caspian away. They said he was ill. Then they said Caspian had died, and you know, he thought life was sad and unfair, and he didn't actually show any interest in his younger sister, who he actually never met. And then when he did finally meet her, when she was about 5 years old, he recognized her and ran towards her, shouting, "Caspian, Caspian!" And his parents took him away and beat him, apparently in front of Cassidy, and also told her that that boy was a thief who snuck in and stole food. Like, really, I have no idea how they expected this to ever work. Like, if they really wanted to keep these two apart forever, they ought to have been shuttling Caleb off to other countries, like Oscar's parents have sent him off here to Guelenor in an attempt to get him married off to a princess far, far away and never come back ever again. Like, ideally as far away as possible, you know, or something, but just to keep him in the shadows and neglect him with the intention that Caspian and Cassidy would never ever meet seems really bizarre. Then we're going to do a lot of do you know about genitals stuff that I don't want to read again. I think this, in terms of writing, I think this section is deliberately cis-sexist in order to make a point, but that doesn't mean I want to stick around and play in it. But just, you know, again, genitals are not gender. The size of your hands are not gender. The composition of your neck is not gender. The size of your chest is not gender. The set of your shoulders is not gender. These things are not gender. So we're just gonna zip through some of this a little bit. My favorite toy was a little blue bear that I carried around with me everywhere, which we saw that in the opening title sequence that introduced everybody. So I'm wondering if there's, at some point in the game, we get to see that full screen artwork of Cassidy and her little blue bear. Slowly, cautiously, Caleb puts his arms around his sister. I don't know why our parents treated you so badly, or why they kept us apart, but it was wrong. But I'm an adult now. They can't lock me away. We can start over. What you did because you loved your brother. That's not wrong. So now we have to decide what to do with Dolores. And Dolores is accusing Caleb of wanting to kill us all. I don't think it makes any sense to accuse Caleb, but I always try to show different content. We defended him last time, and we've got to defend him in his playthrough surely, so we'll just accuse him. This is the real reason you couldn't bring any guards with you, isn't it? You wanted me alone, so that once I wasn't useful to you anymore, you could overpower me. Then you could either kill me, or leave me to take the blame. If Oscar hadn't insisted on coming with me. He would not, and I would not let him. Doesn't matter what I say, does it? You've made up your mind. There is another question. What would you have done with Caspian if she had been him? Done whatever he wanted. So, Caleb really didn't have a good plan. So the accusation sequence didn't really, I feel, add anything. I guess it's plausible. God, I hope that's not what... I don't think that was what he was thinking, to kill Madeline. But... Hold on. Sorry about that. I had a cough. Something caught in my throat. So, I don't think that Caleb was planning to kill Madeline, or to blame her. But I can see why Madeline might think that, considering that he's incredibly violent and was clearly already planning to, I mean, very clearly planning to kill Dolores, didn't just strangle her. Oh, chapter 4. So chapter 3 was a lot of reading, but not a whole lot of choices. We'll go ahead and run through chapter 4 as well. Just because he outright told them, kill the conspirators. And that kind of upsets me because he knows the extent of involvement that Dolores had, but he was perfectly willing to utilize us to kill her and cover up what he'd done. Which, you know, again, everyone can make mistakes, and he's had a terrible upbringing. So I do hope that there's, in his path, there's some kind of redemptive exploration of why we don't do that. He's no longer a helpless child, and the king would find it difficult to thrash him, even if he were so inclined. Still, challenging those who have held power over you all your life is never an easy task, which, you know, is an ongoing theme in this game, that Madeline can't challenge her parents or her sister. Not really. Her employment with Oscar was almost really a sort of rebellion. Oscar can't really change his situations and just run off and marry Madeline without basically starving to death. And then Cassidy, of course, is, of all of them, the most power and responsibility is placed on her as the heir to the role of wisdom. But at the same time, that means that she's lived this incredibly cloistered life with no friends, barely any family. Nobody tells you anything, do they, little prince? Your girl bribed me to break her into Noble's rooms. Maybe she's a thief, huh? Let me go, and I'll tell you what she said about you. I'm not listening to you. No one cares to hear anything more from you. So this is Dolores trying really hard to get out of trouble. Maybe you'd rather ask your Valois girl. She and Duke Farah got mighty cozy in his rooms. What? The word of a known liar is meaningless. Thank you, Caleb. Ask your own questions, you'll see. And what of your oath to serve? Look, do any of you really want to go back to that palace? You set foot inside and you'll be trapped. They'll never let you see the sun again, princess. And you, prince criminal, you think they'll forgive you for what you've done? You've got your freedom and your wits and a good sum of coin. You could start a new life together. These words hold a truth she does not, could not know. With such a sum of gold as that, I could buy land, a house, connections, enough to outfit and support myself while I built my place in society, enough even to make investments to sustain my position for the future. It is not, of course, enough to establish me as anything other than what I am, a gentlewoman of low rank, respectable perhaps, but not among the highest circles. And yet it would be sufficient to grant me what I have never had, an estate of my own, an estate that I could offer to share with another. It would not be the prestigious match that the rulers of Osendower wished for their son. Yet if I were in control of my fate, if Oscar's affections were more than a passing fancy, if we were sure, it might be enough. But that would only be the case if the funds were mine in total and in truth, and they are not. Some of us have a concept of honor. Come with me, any of you. I'll see you straight. And then Caleb gags Dolores, which is kind of his go-to. He is a man of few tools. The walk walk back to the palace of Guelinor is not so great in distance or in difficulty, particularly now that we do not require such secrecy and may make use of the roads. Princess Cassidy struggles on bravely despite her sore toes, but her entire life to this point has been lived in a glass bubble. The novelty of sunlight, open air, and wildflowers is wearing thin. As we continue on our slow journey, Oscar falls in beside me. You were right, you know. About what? Oh, I forgot. You're always right. He shakes his head and sighs. I wasn't thinking about the future, about being married to you. I was only thinking about enjoying myself now. What? You wanted to use me? Did he really just say he was pretending to be in love with me only to get me into bed? What do you mean use? Oh, no, nothing like that. Sorry. What I meant to say was, I've only ever thought about the things I wanted us to do together. Talking about our feelings, going for walks, dancing. We've done those things before. That's my point. It is? I wanted to do things we've always done, but to be able to hold your hand afterwards and be close to you. And then, like last night. I push away the memory of our lips touching. It didn't happen. It will never happen again. I wanted to be able to show you that I cared about you. I wasn't thinking about how things would have to change. I wanted to live in the castle with you and my family and be together like we always have. But that can't happen, can it? You've been trying to tell me all along, and I wasn't listening. So you're right, after all. I am a child. You're a young man, and a kind and caring one. That's not a bad thing to be. You're also beautiful and sweet and clever and much stronger than I thought you were. But I can't say that to you. Not now. You should go talk to Cassidy. This is your best chance to build a relationship with her. You're today's hero, remember? You caught that page when she would have escaped. So, that's really what you want me to do? Why does he have to ask me that? This isn't about what I want. This is about how things are, and how they have to be. And so I still my thoughts. I smooth my brow. I smile at him, and I lie. Yes, that's what I want. Right. He waits for my response, but none is coming. My face is a perfect mask, as long as I don't speak. Then that's what I'll do. Thanks, Maddie. One stiff little motion, and my head nods. And then he's gone. No, he's not gone. Why am I thinking such foolish thoughts? He is right there, doing exactly what he should be. We each have our place. I am doing my job, and doing it well. That's what matters. And so I stand here, with my hands clenched and my fingernails digging into my palms, trying to feel nothing. As we near the palace, we catch sight of a figure in the distance. He's wearing the uniform of a soldier of Guelinor. Of course, they must be sending out search parties by now. So we've already seen this part. The guardsman turns out to apparently be a zealot who believes that Cassidy is not truly the heir to the throne, that the real quote-unquote Cassidy died as a baby and this one is an imposter. He comes closer and offers her his arm, but he hasn't put down his sword. So now we get a fight scene. Cassidy is frozen in place, uncomprehending. Oscar's eyes open wide as he realizes the danger, too late. I see Dolores lurching past me, still bound, driving her shoulder hard into Cassidy's form, knocking the princess off her feet and out of the line of the guardsman's strike. With a quick pivot, I restore my center and draw my dagger. I rush him, both blades flying rapidly to chime against his sword, forcing him to withdraw even further in order to regain the advantage of reach. He brings his greater strength to bear against me, whelming blows that make the daggers ring in my hands. This is no sparring match. I can already feel a burning line across my arm where I failed to completely guard one slap. The guard's heavy, muscular knee slams up hard into my unarmored midsection, knocking the breath out of me. But I have another advantage that he does not. I am not alone. Prince Caleb saves our life, which, I mean, I'm not going to give him all the laurels for that, but he is going to get like a thank you note later. Especially because, at least in this run through, Madeline did accuse him, and she is articulate enough and intelligent enough to potentially make his life difficult. So if he was just, truly a villainous bastard, it probably would have made sense to let her die there before killing the girl. Oh, I killed him, but it was too late. She was already mortally wounded. And he didn't do that, so, it doesn't redeem everything he's ever done wrong, but it's nice. So he asked Dolores if she knew anything about the guard, and she didn't. Which I believe. Why would she have... I feel like if you know that a sword's gonna be coming at the princess, she probably would have stayed out of the way as opposed to diving to cover her. And here Cassidy does, and this just breaks my heart. May your rest bring you peace. No matter what they've done, I would not wish for anyone to die. And I love Cassidy so much. And Caleb points out that if he'd had a bow and arrow or a gun, then this could have gone very differently. Not if Caleb had it, if the guard had one. He could have massacred Cassidy and potentially more of us before he even got within range. And Madeline speaks up, because this is the playthrough where we broke into Duke Farrod's apartment, says, Duke Farrod, he brought a collection of muskets with him. They're stored in his chambers. So this probably isn't his assassin. Or else there are more out there. We should hurry. We can send someone to pick him up later. We need to get you to safety. So, now we get to the palace. And I don't think we get any choices here, so we're gonna sort of fly through the rest of... What is this, chapter 4? We're gonna fly through the rest of chapter 4. We reach the front gates. This time, Caleb's bellowed greeting is met with a chorus of hails. A full company of guards charge out to surround and escort us. Which I guess they must have had the full company just waiting by the door or something? I don't know. Inside, the guards suddenly call a halt. Royals this way, servants that way. Maddie stays with me. I mean, Miss Valois. Only one of them is a prisoner. We have orders, Your Highness. Your parents wish to speak with you urgently in their private chambers. And they're going to speak to them separately, which is... I really do not like the parents/royals in this. They're sympathetic people. They're clearly not, they don't, eat puppies for breakfast, but they're not good people. Oh, that was... Sorry, I have to back up. I missed something. Oscar looks at me, but says nothing. Ordinarily, in response to such a look, I would pat his arm, or squeeze his hand, or some other such gesture of reassurance. But with my new resolve to avoid physical contact between us, I must hold back. I never thought about how often we touched, until I had to stop myself from doing it. Very well, carry on. Alright, let's finish this out. Dolores and I are herded to a room to await your Majesty's pleasure. They take our weapons, and then they leave us alone. I'm gonna skip through a little bit of this. So here, you could at least untie me. Last time I didn't untie her, and I also didn't scratch her nose. So, I don't like being cruel, but just so we can see what happens, I'm gonna not untie her, and I'm not gonna scratch her nose. And then sometime we will untie her. This is your palace full of your friends. How would you like it? Half out of joint and all bruised. My nose itches, so we're just gonna ignore her. Your nose is not my problem. Maybe I should just rub my nose on the table, huh? I won't have to polish it now. Her eyes meet and hold mine for a moment, but her will is weaker than mine, and she soon looks away. So Madeline asks why Dolores betrayed her masters, and points out that this position is better than she could have ever hoped for. And Dolores points out, yeah, I've totally been told that my entire life. You want to hear this, Lady Whatever? I'm a foundling, dropped off on a doorstep and raised with the other dogs. I've no idea who my people are. Charity brought me up, that in the street. So I learned a few letters, and eating dirt, and picking pockets, and washing shirts. House girls. Sometimes somebody wants us for a servant. Nobody important enough. So God, if they took her as an infant to pass off as Caspian, and then dropped her off somewhere as a foundling, and her life was crappy as an orphan, then that's probably why they feel, especially if they took her from a non-orphan situation, like maybe pink hair is rare, they could have taken her from a family that cared about her for just long enough to play Cassidy, and then dropped her off as an orphan, and basically ruined her entire life, which would be kind of par for the course for Friedrich and Paloma. And like I said, I have no evidence for this at all except based on the pink hair, but it's my headcanon so far. One day, this fancy lady, all in good clean clothes, comes to the house. She says His Majesty wants to look good, do something nice for the scum of the land. One of us little insects gets to go off to the palace and live the life of luxury, and they pick me. They clean me up and give me new clothes and the best meal I've ever had, and I think I must be dreaming. Then why? Why would you betray them? You got all the book learning, but you're still dumb as a stone. And I don't hate Dolores. I don't even disagree with her. I don't agree with what she's done any more than I agree with what Caleb has done. But at the same time, I don't agree with Madeline's opinion that she should be abjectly grateful because the royalty gave her a job being a servant to them, and that was just super really kind of them. So here's where the guards break in and arrest Madeline Valois for the kidnapping as opposed to Dolores. No mistake. Will you come with us, or will we have to carry you? None of your business, but she's to see the king for her reward. A reward? How is this possible? This isn't over. If you've harmed Oscar in any way, you will wish they'd hanged you. Okay, here we are in prison. And I'm gonna skip through this a little bit too. A lot of thoughts about Dolores, about waiting, about Caleb, Cassidy, Oscar, about the fact that the prison is not as bad as it could be. It's so quiet in here. About how she's very lonely and very calm. Oscar might be in trouble. I must do something. And now Oscar's gonna visit us. Forgetting promises, forgetting decorum, I thrust my hand through the bars to capture his. I'm sorry. I never should have let them separate us. What happened? I don't know. They split us up. When King Friedrich finally came to talk to me, he starts saying that I've misunderstood this situation. Because of course Prince Caleb didn't kidnap his sister, and apparently that servant didn't either. They're off limits. Caleb abducting Cassidy would be a scandal, therefore they claim it didn't happen. But things have gone too far to dust away the whole situation. The blame should have fallen on Dolores. She was, after all, guilty. But for some reason that I cannot yet divine, it seems the king has other ideas. They can't be blamed, so someone has to be. And that means you and I. So, what is the official story? They said that if I didn't agree, they'd have you executed. The story is that you were behind the whole thing. You wanted to make me look like a hero, and I knew nothing about it. So I'm the villain. What is it then? Flogging? Branding? My thumbs? I would never let them do anything like that to you. They need your silence to pass their fiction, don't they? What did they offer? You have to stay here in the dungeon until we leave. Then, once you're out of Gwelinor, you never come back. That's all? Well, they also want you to confess, in public. That way it doesn't look like a cover-up. But it's good, because once they've proclaimed that you're just banished, they can't change their minds. So it'll be okay. That's right, isn't it? You'll be safe. It's not even a real punishment. I know I wouldn't want to come back here. It's certainly better than being tortured or killed, but not a real punishment. What will his parents think when we return to Osendower? They too have reputations to protect. The full weight of the scandal will fall upon my shoulders. I don't believe they would harm me, especially not with Oscar to speak for me, but I would by necessity be cast out, unemployed and unemployable. Not a one of my ideas for supporting myself would survive in such circumstances. Oscar can't see it. He's so pleased that he's protected me, saved me from a horrible fate. He doesn't know what this will mean. But what else can I do? If the Crown of Gwelinor is determined to make me a scapegoat, I have no leverage to convince them otherwise. I could attempt to escape and flee, but what would become of Oscar? Even if he ran away with me, the scandal would follow us. I will not give up all hope. At least if I take the blame, then Oscar will be declared innocent. And if we return safely to Osendower, and his parents are grateful for what I've done, perhaps they will have me quietly pensioned off. You're right, it's not so bad. I'll visit you all the time. I'll bring you books and food. And so here, Maddie tells him that they can't do it that way. If they're gonna play along with her being a villain, then he needs to play along too. Which, I mean, she's having to pretend to be guilty, so he has to pretend too. It can't all fall on her. Maybe with some distance between us, it will allow these ridiculous emotions to run their course. Whatever you do, you have to take care of yourself. You have to stay safe and stay out of trouble. You go on now. Don't leave them waiting. Tell them I understand and I agree. I don't like leaving you here. Oscar, royalty aren't supposed to do what they like. Maybe I don't want to be a prince anymore. What good has it ever done me? No, that's not true. It brought me you. Go on already. Fine, I'm going. I can't see him, but I can hear his footsteps slowly retreating. Every time I force him away from me, I wonder if this time will be the last. If this time, he will never return. Okay. So now she's called before the summoning hall to deliver her confession. You're accused of high felony. You have subjected our rightful heir to assault. Cassidy and Caleb are not here. You have inflicted physical harm upon your master. But Duke Farod, he is there, watching me through narrowed eyes. Prince Gaston and Prince Nazagi as well. I notice they are not accusing me of murdering the guard we left outside the gates. Do they even realize there was an assassination attempt? What is your answer to these charges? I admit my guilt and await His Majesty's judgment. King Praedric comes forward and both pardons us and puts pressure on Osendower to punish her further, which is sort of clever and evil of him at the same time. Like, he could be worse, and this kind of ties back into what she was saying earlier about how just because someone isn't frothingly evil doesn't mean they're not a villain. And Friedrich's kind of a good example of this in that he definitely could be worse. He's not executing Madeline or sending assassins to her prison cell, but he's not a good person. His actions aren't good. He may have good intentions, but his actions cause an incredible amount of harm. Now, I'm sure from his point of view, he's protecting his kingdom and his daughter and his family. I get that there are reasons. Villainy usually has reasons. It's not usually just for the evil lulz. But he's still harming a person that he knows is innocent. I have known Cassidy only briefly, but it's difficult to imagine the kind and caring princess I met going along with this charade. And neither Cassidy nor Kaelin was present at the audience. Has something happened to them? King Friedrich and his wisdom Paloma have shown themselves willing to mislead and manipulate their own children in the past. There may be schemes underway that I have not yet guessed. Perhaps I acted hastily by agreeing to take this fall, but my options at the time were extremely limited, and still are. Who could possibly come to my aid? So here we have options, and I'm going to actually go ahead and cut a save here, and we'll come back because obviously we're going to go with Oscar, and we've been, following his kissy-kissy romance storyline, so he should come to our aid, and that'll cut a new chapter 5, 6, and 7 that we haven't seen before. And those will go back to being kind of longish videos because it'll be all new content and I'll be reading it from scratch. So I'm going to go ahead and call a halt on this one. We went through chapters 3, 4, and... well, no. Chapters 2, 3, and 4. I always get it mixed up because the prologue messes me up. This has been The Royal Trap by Hanako Games. My name is Anna Mardal, and thank you so much for watching along. I will see you in the next Let's Play.